Oh, yes.
Welcome back once again, everyone. Today, we're finally taking a look at the brand new Amazon-exclusive Transformers War for Seibertron Kingdom Battle Across Time Collection, Maximal Grimlock and Autobot Mirage. This 2-pack serves as a complement to the previous release 2-pack of Skywarp and Sideswipe, and the whole point of the Battle Across Time collection is to group Autobots with their futuristic Maximal counterparts. Now this one's a little interesting because Beast Wars Skywarp or Maximal Skywarp is not the same character as the Decepticon Seeker, he just shares a name. However, the Maximal Grimlock, in virtually all tellings of the Beast Wars fiction, is actually Generation 1 Grimlock. Now, I don't know if they're actually acknowledging that here. I mean, there's not really any built-up fiction around these 2-packs, and it wasn't shown, in the TV show or anything to have Grimlock be there. But, I mean, can you imagine if they run into, their buddy Grimlock in a far future incarnation? It'd be pretty cool. Anyway, if you've seen my reviews before, you know how this goes. We're going to take a look at the toy's packaging. Then we'll open it up, we'll check the instructions, and then we'll see Grimlock and Mirage themselves in both their alt modes and robot modes. Naturally, I'll be doing plenty of group shots and comparisons today. And then at the end of the video, I'll give my final thoughts. So Grimlock and Mirage come in this specialized Kingdom box set, which is much wider than your normal packaging and is designed to be combined with the other box set. In fact, let's go ahead and see how that looks right now. So you see, you place them side by side. Luckily, they're the same height. Should get the shot nice and center here. And there you go. You get this really nice diorama type image of all 4 of your Autobot / Maximal guys fighting against the Predacons and Decepticons. So you can see Waspinator just kind of skulking in the background. On this end, you can see Scorponok getting ready to fight them. And then on this side, you get Dinobot, who in this continuity is still a Predacon. And then you even get Starscream up here firing down on our heroes. So it makes for a very, very cool bit of artwork. And I wish I could just get like a straight print of this rather than have it across 2 boxes. Because it is very well done. And there's a lot of effort that went into this. And I really like it. And it's a lot better than the previous pair of multi-packs, which had your Prowl and Ironhide and then your Dirge and Ramjet, where they were 2 pictures taken from the same scene, but they didn't line up together. They were from like different angles and everything. So I don't know, they kind of dropped the ball with that one. I'm glad to see they got back on form with this packaging, because the Siege one had a nice little, put together diorama too. So I really like the way this turned out. It looks just absolutely gorgeous. So back to our actual new box here. Set this aside. So you got all that artwork. You get your Kingdom side panel here when it's not being supplemented with the other box. And look at that. Somebody made a huge deep cut in my box. That's awesome. Thanks, guys. All right. Oh, yeah, by the way, this is officially War for Cybertron number 40. So we're getting pretty deep into the Kingdom toys now. All right. So on the back, we get our renders of the toys. And you can see Grimlock over here at 28 steps between his 2 modes. Mirage is 20. And for anyone not in the know, Grimlock is a new head retool of the Predacon Dinobot toy, sporting a head to one that's much more similar to what was on the original mold used for those 2 characters. And then Mirage is a fairly heavy retool of the Siege Mirage toy, now giving him an Earth mode. Now, I have a lot of things to say about these toys, and I'm going to get into them. If you came here for just a glowing review where I ignore all the problems here, you came to the wrong video, because I have a lot of strong opinions. Without even having them in hand yet, I already know where this is going, so buckle up, there's going to be a lot of criticism here. Okay, here's our big instruction book for our 2 new characters. So you get Grimlock and Mirage here, renders of the toys, and the front page has Mirage, so this shows off how to have him wield his weapons, and also how to have him store them. He's got these like shallow 5mm ports on the backs of his arms, and how to take the little missile out of the launcher and wield it separately. Not really a fan of that, it looks kind of silly, but oh well. All right, and then we get into our transformation, which is pretty significantly different from the Siege Mirage. There's a lot of retooling done to this toy. It's not just like a reshelling or, slight modification. It's, in many ways, a new toy. Then we get around to the back for Grimlock, and his transformation is exactly the same as Dinobot's. So if you're familiar with that one, this shouldn't really require any extra work. So luckily we do get a nice full instruction sheet to show us what we need to do. Okay, now we get Grimlock and Mirage in their alt modes. So Grimlock turns into a Velociraptor, or, you know, what we thought a Velociraptor looked like in the 90s. And then Mirage turns into his classic Formula 1 racer alt mode. And it's been heavily redone to give it a much more Earth-like appearance and to get rid of some questionable choices like having a fake car hood on the back. You can see that's all gone now and replaced with these really nice little engine details. So that is one big improvement. So yeah, in these modes, you basically have a redeco and then a heavy retool. Now Mirage, in this mode, I say he looks very good. This is what people were clamoring for when they wanted an update to the G1 design. He's got the weapon storage right here along the sides, which in my opinion is a lot better than sticking them on top of the spoiler. And I mean, he works really well. You can see he's still got the fake hood chest, but it folds away now, so it's not just sticking off the back. So that is a big improvement. Grimlock, I'm not quite as happy with when it comes to color choices and everything. So the original Grimlock toy was in his Raptor mode like mostly all white, and then he had these like dark bluish spots running like on his head and down his back, and it earned him the nickname Dalmatian Grimlock because it kind of made him look like a Dalmatian. Now, for whatever reason, they opted to take that design and radically alter it. I don't know what their reasoning for doing that was. Maybe they just thought the Dalmatian spots looked silly. But then at the same time, this toy does still have spots on its back. It's got these black spots right here around the shoulder and neck area. And then they give it like a big old just blob of black on top of the head. And then for some reason, they had all this gray. You can see it covers like almost all his back, his lower arms, lower legs, his lower jaw. I don't know why. I mean, I get there's some, artistic license when you're updating a toy, but it seems really unnecessary to me. And it ends up making for a very patchy looking mess of an alt mode, especially in the way that the gray is broken up, because here they do attempt to blend the gray with the white. So, he uses gray plastic for the lower arms, and then he gets like a white kind of paint wash up here on the shoulders to make it look like the colors blend together. And they do it around here, which is nice. But then for some reason, his like whole jaw is gray, and then there's just like a cut to like black and white up here. You get this hinge bit, which gives like a partial white striping going on. And then you get some painted white stripes. The one thing that is an improvement over Grimlock is that his little blade weapon does color match the tail. So you don't have like some oddly colored bit sticking off of the end. It looks like it could actually be part of the tail. And then this, to me, is kind of my least favorite part with the gray. They don't bother with the whole paint washing thing for the lower legs. So you just get, straight gray up until this knee joint, and then it just becomes white. And I don't like it. It looks bad. You can also see that they replaced the beautiful gold coloring of the original Grimlock with this like dirty bronze kind of color. Again, I don't understand the reasoning for doing stuff like that. It seems like a very unnecessary change, and not for the better. I'm not sure how many people would think this looks better, just aesthetically, and also the fact that, gold is a signature color for Grimlock. You'd think they'd want to keep that synergy there, but they elected to change it for whatever reason. And then here we have something interesting. You can see that the eye detail that on Dinobot was painted in, because it becomes kind of like faux raptor head kibble on the chest. They leave it unpainted, and I guess they decided to do that to make the raptor mode a little more realistic, not having an eye on there, which maybe I can see that possibly being the case. But then you got the like rib details here. So you still have like bronze and red paint here. And it seems like a very, very odd choice to me. I don't know why they went that route. And you're going to see just how much that hurts the robot mode, because it doesn't come out looking very great. So, yeah, it's a quality mold, right? The Kingdom Dinobot mold is easily the best Dinobot we've ever had outside maybe the Masterpiece. But the color choices are so questionable. You're just wondering who they put in charge of recoloring this, because why? Just why did you? I mean, it was simple. White Raptor, some spots on the top. I mean, if you wanted to change it to something that looked more natural, like striping or something, sure. And, you know, gold armor pieces for the robot. They're just like, nah. Nah, let's just radically change the whole thing, because I'm sure people that are buying this for nostalgia want us to just change everything. Because I keep mentioning him, here is a comparison shot with Dinobot. And you can see just how much better it all works on the Dinobot version of this, right? His colors are very well done. They're very natural looking. They don't break up in a weird way. You know, they made sure to lay the paint out to where it looked pretty natural for the most part. Again, the only thing I didn't really like was the purple sticking out of the end of the tail. I mean, it's the right color for the sword, but the fact that they have it protruding like this instead of finding a way to hide it away makes it look pretty ugly. And these are the eye details I mentioned, right? They have it painted in here to look like the raptor eyes on like a stretched out raptor head in robot mode. I don't get it. I don't understand why. I mean, they had something that was really, really well done overall with the colors and the choices, and they just said, nah, screw it. Let's just go crazy. And it wasn't crazy in a good way. It wasn't interesting crazy. It was like you let a 4-year-old get a hold of the colors and, you know, some crayons. Okay, here's a nice little group shot for fun with the Studio Series 86 Grimlock. So you get our Maximal Grimlock hanging out with his past self as an Autobot. And these are obviously very different forms for the character because they don't even have the same alt mode, right? Grimlock is typically a mechanical Tyrannosaurus Rex, but when he got his Maximal update, he didn't become an organic T-Rex like Megatron, he became a Velociraptor, which is honestly a little strange given Grimlock's penchant for wanting to be like big and powerful, and Raptors are more, you know, swift and rely more heavily on, you know, claws and teeth and brute strength. So, you know, fictionally it would be an odd choice for him, but I think when they designed the Beast Wars Grimlock toy way back when, they hadn't intended him to actually be G1 Grimlock. He was just another Beast Wars character that shared a G1 name for copyright reasons mostly. You know, that was something that was kind of retconned later as him actually being the original Autobot, just reborn in a new form. But either way, despite his apparent change of heart of battle tactics, I mean, he still maintains a very dangerous alt mode, and it is cool seeing the two versions of him together like this. Okay, now we get our comparison shot for Mirage along with his Siege counterpart. And the front end area is pretty much exactly the same. They did change this little piece right here, which I don't know what you call this. I'm not a car guy. I would call it the front fender, but I'm sure there's a different name for it. But this middle piece is the same. The feet seem to be the same pieces. And then these bits, which form like the front of the legs and form like the kind of cockpit area, these are all different. All new sculpting here. The forearms are, I think also, yeah, they're a different sculpt. They're very similarly detailed, but they are different. All this is different. You can see, you know, how basically the entire upper body has been redesigned to transform differently. All that stuff's different. The wheels are the same. They didn't change those, but that's been pretty consistent with these Earth mode updates. So yeah, I mean, there's just two very different takes, right? This is supposed to be an alien version of his classic alt mode, which is why there's like an actual domed cockpit instead of something you just sit in. And I think they're both good in their own right. I know a lot of people didn't like the transparent blue plastic on the Siege one because they're afraid of breakage, and that is a valid concern. In fact, my Hollow Mirage that I'll be pulling out here in a moment, his little shoulder port where you plug his missile launcher in, that cracked like as soon as I put the missile launcher in. So valid concern. I think it does look good though. Me personally, I like both of these. I don't mind having the, you know, Seibertronian mode Mirage. The only thing I don't like, again, is just the way they designed all this to have the faux hood on the back when you got a real hood right here. It doesn't look very good. But from the front, they both, in my opinion, look equally impressive. But for those that wanted an actual Earth-based Formula One racer, you do get this, and it looks really, really great for what it is. For fun, here's another group shot with all versions of Mirage and War for Seibertron. So you get your Kingdom, your Siege, you get your Holo Mirage, which was also part of an Amazon exclusive 2-pack. So Mirage and Sideswipe have been done twice by Amazon now in the War for Seibertron trilogy. Doesn't do much for variety, that's for sure. And then you get the Netflix Decepticon Mirage, which, you know, if you watch the Netflix show, you find out it's really just Mirage in a Decepticon disguise. He doesn't actually turn or anything, which, in my opinion, huge waste of potential, because there was always that kind of traitorous streak to the character, which, you know, really doesn't get explored in any of the TV shows. So yeah, here's just a layout of all the different takes on the character since the trilogy started and how the designs kind of changed and evolved in that time. Okay, now we're going to do Mirage's Transformation. I'm not going to cover Grimlock's because, you know, as I pointed out, it is identical to Dinobot's. If you do really want to see that, just check out Dinobot's review for all those steps. But Mirage, being pretty significantly different from the Siege version, I figured warranted another transformation sequence. So, first thing you want to do is remove his weapons, if they're on there. You want to turn this missile to where it's pointing down like that. Get that out of there. All right, you're going to pop the forearms free from this whole assembly here. And you want to separate the legs. A lot of this part right here is going to be identical to the Siege Mirage when it comes to the legs. I'm going to bring this down. These armatures always fight me on like every version of this mold. Like they don't want to come down. And it's a little spooky when this part right here is made of translucent plastic, right? Because it might break. So yeah, you just flip all this in like you would normally. Swing that down until it plugs in nice and firmly. It will plug in firmly, come on. There you go. Rotate the leg, like so. We'll do the same thing over here. So, get it to come loose. Fight with it until it decides to cooperate. This is a lot tougher than the Siege one, I'll tell you that. A lot more resistance in this. So again, good thing it's not clear plastic. Alright, flip the feet down, collapse this down until it tabs together firmly. Get your ankle tilt going if you want to. Alright, then we get all this. So you want to separate the forearms like so. And this is where like this whole new assembly comes in. So these swing upward. They're on a hinge right here. So you get like that. You want to swing these out to the side. You're gonna pull this little white piece out. Flip Mirage's head down. You have to push it because it's kind of tabbed in. Well, it really fights you, doesn't it? There you go. Flip that back in. Close it. Flip the wheels in. And then you bring these shoulder panels down till they tab into the side, like so. And you want to spin his little spoiler bits to where they're facing like that. Get the hands flipped out. Same thing on this side. Your panel here might try to come up as you're raising the arms, depending on your tolerances, so just be aware of that. All right, so we get all this, and then lastly, we collapse this torso area down. So it's on two hinges, and you just bring it down until it plugs in. A nice natural position, and here you go. This is the new Kingdom Mirage. And so far, he looks fantastic, right? No complaints. He looks like Mirage. That's great. Let's go ahead. Let's give him his blaster, because, you know, he's got to have his token rifle here. Let's go ahead, put his shoulder cannon on. Let's put his... Oh, we can't put his shoulder cannon on. Look at that. So, yeah, when they redesigned this guy, they designed him in such a way to where you can no longer mount the shoulder cannon to his shoulder. You just can't. Like, you can store it on the back of his arm, like they show you in the instructions. Have it just pointing up forever. You can store it here. It's actually really loose, maybe not there. But yeah, you he can't use a shoulder cannon anymore. Not like a shoulder cannon anyway. He can wield it like just a handheld blaster. That looks silly. It's like if the Seekers couldn't put their, null rays on their arms and had to hold them in their hands. I mean, how disappointing is that, right? You have a figure that up to this point was just fantastic. Ult mode was great, arguably an improvement over the Siege one. The robot mode looks good, and then he can't fully utilize his accessories. And to me, that you can't do that, right? When the name of the game is nostalgia, and I mean, let's be honest, War for Seibertron, that's what it is, right? It is appealing to G1 nostalgia. If you don't want to do that, that's when you have lines like Cyberverse and stuff that are doing their own thing. So, you go and you're like, hey kids, do you want an Earth mode Mirage? And like, yeah. It's like, so you want him to be more accurate in car mode? Yeah. Well, do you want him to be less accurate in robot mode? No. Well, too bad. And it's like, this is what you get. And they had to know people were going to have an issue with this. They had to know that people were not going to like the fact that he can't have his signature shoulder cannon where it belongs. To me, I think that's just really short-sighted with the design process. And I don't think it's going to make anybody happy. Now, I've seen some people defending it, some people saying, oh, well, you can use parts from other toys to simulate it, or, there's a third-party upgrade kit. But if your standard for toy design is good if you buy an expensive third-party upgrade, that's just bad design. I'm sorry. And I know these guys are smart, right? Transformers wouldn't exist if these designers were not as talented as they are. And I know for a fact they could have found a way to make this work. Like, they could have found a way to put just maybe shallow holes right here, right? They did the shallow hole thing on the back of the arm. I don't see a reason there couldn't be a shallow hole over this mushroom peg. Right there. Would have worked just fine. Yeah, it'd stick up a little bit, but at least you could put it on his shoulder. I mean, it just bugs me so much. So yeah, that is my major issue with this toy. I feel like they really dropped the ball in the design phase and just said, oh, well, maybe they won't care that much. But it's like, do you know G1ers? They care. And I care, and I don't even consider myself a G1er, but I'm bothered by this because I know they could do better if they wanted to. All right, since we already have Mirage out, let's go ahead and compare him to a Siege counterpart. And you can see here, especially in the robot mode, that there's a lot of different tooling here, right? We already talked about like all that shoulder assembly and all that's different. The chest pieces are completely different. His actually creating some smaller chest kibble that's a little more flattened down and arguably a little better looking. Oh yeah, here's something I forgot to mention. So here, he's got the decal 26 Orc. And that's kind of a tongue-in-cheek reference to the original toy, which had a 26 and said Elf on it. But Elf was a name brand, and they couldn't really, get the licensing for that. So, Elf, Orc, haha. The thing that makes this really odd, can't really see it too well now, but those details are not on the actual car hood at all. They leave that part blank, but then it's on here, which completely destroys the illusion of this just being a, kind of size morphed, car hood for him. Again, just another weird thing where it's like, God, you guys did so much right with this, but how'd you mess that up? Either have the decal on both or don't have it on either, because again, it just destroys the illusion that this is meant to be the same piece as the front of the car. So, not a fan of that. I mean, I like the callback, but I really wish they would have put it on the actual car too. You can see the upper leg pieces, despite being very similar looking, are all new. This outside bit here on the wheels is new, like I said. The shoulders are new, so the spoiler's completely different. It's a lot smaller on our new side swipe. Already pointed out how the forearms are different pieces too. The hands, I'm pretty sure are the same. They look the same. And then the head is also the same between them, which is kind of surprising, kind of not. On some figures like Ironhide and Ratchet, despite being retools of their Siege counterparts, they actually gave them new heads, which had generally less panel lines going on, right? Fit the Earthrise aesthetic more than the Siege ones. But then when you got like Sideswipe and Red Alert, they kept the heads from the Siege toys. So in this case, they opted for that approach. Another thing worth pointing out is that the gray used, the gray plastic, is a much warmer color on this toy than is the other one. In fact, this is a bit closer to the Decepticon gray colors that were used in Netflix. So, yeah, it's a little irksome to me because you can see how much better this looks with the shoulder cannon mounted on top. Plus, they actually bothered to paint it on the Siege toy. Here, they just left it completely unpainted, so it looks a little cheap. He came so close, you know what I mean? I would say proportion-wise and all that, the robot mode for the new toy looks better. I really think it does. I think, you know, all the small details really add up to be, you know, marginally better-looking Mirage, right? Not like a huge night and day improvement, because the Siege one does look pretty good and, you know, is pretty unmistakable as Mirage. But they did make a lot of improvements to, you know, some of the complaints with the design. But they kill me with the fact that they did not include a way to attach a shoulder cannon. Like, it needs to be there. It's really iconic, right? Like I said, it's like the Seekers without their null rays, or Megatron without his fusion cannon, right? It doesn't look right when this is supposed to be an update to the G1 design. Here's another full group shot of the 4 different Mirages. Again, we get our Holo Mirage from the 2-pack, and then our Netflix Decepticon Mirage. You'll also notice, if you haven't seen it before, that the Holo Mirage, kind of hard to see, but he actually has a toy-based head sculpt. That, you know, they call it the Sphinx Head Mirage, because that's how the original toy looked, before the cartoon took some liberties with the design. I'd still love to see a version of this toy that uses that sculpt without, like, just being clear blue, and, you know, doing, like, traditional Mirage toy colors. I'd buy it. I'd 100% buy it. Even if they used it for this version of the toy, which might make more sense to do, honestly. Just slap this head on here, I'm sure they can, and do it like the dark blue toy colors. I'd totally pick one up. All right, now we're going back to Grimlock so we can see his robot mode. And the most noticeable thing here is the new head sculpt, which is really nice, right? It's a Beast Wars toy-based head sculpt that was used for both the Dinobot and the Grimlock toys. And it just so happens to, you know, kind of vaguely resemble Grimlock's design with the mouth plate and all that. It does get some green eyes and a nice silver-like face area against a black helmet. So the head sculpt looks good. It does sit a little high on the ball joint, which is something some people noticed in the picture of the toy. I'll say it looks a lot better in person than it does in renders or stock photos, but it is a little bit higher than it should be. Shouldn't get this like gap right here. It should come down a little more, which is, it's unfortunate. You can see the tail is done up, or the tail blade, sorry, is done up in straight white. And then, you know, this is where the color choices with the plastic and the paint start to rear their ugly heads. So you can see that the top blade area here for his rotating blade is done up in gray plastic as opposed to white like the rest of it, which is actually counter to how the render showed it. The render actually showed this all being white. So I guess originally it was all going to be white with like gray paint instead of gray with white paint here. Again, the really bad transition on the elbows is just in full effect here. Looks not so great. The legs are very unfortunate. So you can see that for some reason they have this kind of half splitting thing going on with the colors. You got the interior part of the legs here, which is just all gold, which is kind of how Dinobot is. But then you get here where the knees are split. You get white on one side, bronze or gold on the other. And then the feet are split too, which is, again, really, really odd. Dinobot, he opted to keep the feet the brown raptor skin color, which does, you know, take away some accuracy points from how he would look in the show, but at least it looks cohesive, right? It's all one color. Here, the outer side is painted, the inside isn't, and it looks very odd and disjointed. And then we get to my least favorite part of this whole thing, the chest area, right? So they put all this black paint on top of the raptor head for some reason, right? Just a big old splotch of paint there. I don't know why, but they did. But then they don't paint the surrounding area that's supposed to like be a continuation of the raptor head. So you just get this really odd just line where it cuts off and becomes white, and you know, completely breaks the illusion that this is supposed to be the raptor head stretched over his chest. Again, I don't know why they did it that way. Also, as I mentioned, the eyes are unpainted, whereas they normally should be green, or at least something other than just the same color as the skin. But he does at least get the rib detailing. And, we kind of already knew this was coming. Early leaked photos of the toy showed the chest to look like this. And then on the packaging art, however, you actually saw this area was painted to extend that black coloring into a nice transition across here to make it look natural. And the eyes were painted green, like you'd expect them to be. And I had really, really hoped that, the concept art, or not the concept art, but the packaging art was how the finished toy would look, right? I figured maybe they're early samples or a reject, so it wasn't fully painted. Because the thing that comes to mind every time I see this is prototype, right? It looks like not all the paint is there, that not all the plastic colors are final, because everything is so disjointed looking on this toy. I was like trying to convince myself this can't be the final look. It's going to look better in hand. No, it was as bad as I thought it was going to be. And again, it kills me because I want to like this thing. I really, really do. When they revealed Dinobot, I'm like, man, Beast Wars Grimlock, it's coming. It's coming. I can't wait. I never owned the original. I wouldn't buy the original now because it's so prone to, breaking apart because of the gold plastic. I was so ready for this. And then seeing what we actually get, it just kills me. It's like, look, this could be so much better. And the crazy thing is a lot of this is really self-inflicted, right? This weird plastic color clashing here, it could have been avoided if you just made him mostly white like he was originally. Why they added all that gray is completely beyond me. I really don't get it, right? All these parts that are molded in gray plastic could have just been white. They could have been the same plastic color as all the white parts. There's no reason it had to be this way. Somebody just decided that was a good idea, apparently. And it makes for a very inferior product. And then, when we get to the chest area, my only guess, because it looks like, according to the packaging art, it was at least planned to be painted at some point. And I think the only reason it's not is budget, right? They're like, ooh, we don't really feel like putting any more paint on this, so we're going to take that away. And that to me is inexcusable, because it's like, look, if you were worried about too much paint, you could have not gone with the gray and had to slather all this gray and white paint all over the thing. Like, problem solved right there. You could have left him pretty largely unpainted, right? Like, White Raptor, few, gobs of either blue or black paint for the spots, or, whatever kind of top detail you wanted. And then you could have had plenty to go around here. In fact, you wouldn't have even needed the black paint on here because the head would be white. Maybe you could do some spots here, I don't know. But, the fact that the eyes are just unpainted, this looks like an unfinished prototype, and that's just what I see in my head every time I look at this. Plus, the odd color choices on the legs bother me too. Also, the decision to use this ugly bronze color instead of the gold, and there are just so many bad decisions here. I want to know, like, they must have like given this to like the weird guy that sits in the corner, like, hey, weird guy, you designed the Grimlock, and he's like, okay, because this can't be their best work, right? Like, this is, ugh. And there's an images going around out there, and I'll show them off, of a custom painted Grimlock, somebody that took this toy and spruced it up and not only made it look closer to the original, but just made it better looking and more premium in every way. You can see here, I got them up. Just how much more cohesive this custom job is, and like the colors just pop so much more. The gold is gorgeous, and this could have been done. This could have easily been done if they had molded this in the right plastics and stuff, and it would have required less paint. Like, it baffles me that they went the route they did. Now, I don't think they would have given him quite this like really awesome shiny paint that he has on here. I'm not sure what that is. It's really premium looking, but something just of this plastic quality, just done up in a more gold color, it would have worked. And why? I hate that I don't love this thing. I really do, because it could have been so much more. Right, here's our comparison with the infinitely superior version of this mold, the Kingdom Dinobot. And just look at Dinobot. Look how cohesive he looks. Look how, everything about him just looks like people knew what they were doing. And then look at Grimlock. And you just see a clear difference here. how you could get it so right here and then so wrong here, it just really baffles me. In fact, Grimlock should be easier, because if you're just going for like toy-based details, you don't need a lot of the extra embellishments that Dinobot has. You know, like you don't need his shoulder pads to be a gold color, right? That wasn't really important for Grimlock. And you know, it's just, I don't understand what went wrong here. Look at Dinobot's legs and how much more sense they make. You get a little bit of half splitting right here, right on this little detail around the side of the knees, but like the knee pads themselves are still all the same color. The feet aren't two different colors, and then his cool little like ridge accessory thing here on the pelvic area is actually painted a different color than the rest of it. I mean, one of these looks professional and one of these looks like, honestly, kind of a KO. This looks like some knockoff version of the Dinobot mold. And that should just never be a thing with an official toy. It really shouldn't. So yeah, seeing this comparison just makes the flaws of the Grimlock toy just all the more apparent. Let me stop ragging on this toy for a minute so we can do our really cool group shot of the Studio Series Grimlock. And this, having them in their robot modes, makes it a little more apparent that this is an evolution of the character. Again, the head sculpt just looks like a slightly more organic and stylized version of the classic head sculpt, right? You got the antenna type details, you got the center crest, you got the mouth plate going across. The biggest difference that Grimlock has, the G1 Grimlock has visor type eyes, whereas this one, you know, Beast Wars guy has like individual eyes. Aside from that though, you know, it's pretty close. It works out really, really well. It's just, I think it's just one of those good coincidences. It's kind of like how the Thrilling 30 Springer works so well as like a pre-Beast Wars version of Dinobot, which is why they were going to use him before FunPub got shut down. Or even how Seibertron Landmine works so well as a pre-Beast Wars Rhinox. So yeah, I think it's unintentional synergy, but it ends up working out well. Seeing this image does remind me painfully that our Studio Series Grimlock does not include his sword. This one gets a sword. Sadly, this guy doesn't. He just gets the little double-barreled cannon thing. So, 'tis a shame still. Maybe someday they'll do an accessory pack, but I think at this point they're not going to. I'd be shocked if they actually included his sword and the other Dinobot swords at some point. But despite all the issues with this toy, this is still a very cool group shot and, you know, a really neat way to show the evolution of the character with some modern figures. Okay, and one last group shot I want to do. Here are Sideswipe and Skywarp from the accompanying 2-pack for the Battle Across Time set. Just so you can see all these guys together in one battle pose and one scene like you see on the box. And, I mean, they're a nice little assortment of characters, right? You get 2 relatively obscure Maximal characters, 2 very well-known G1 characters in updated bodies to reflect their cartoon appearance. And really, it's the contrast of these 2 design philosophies that makes this set so interesting, right? You get the past and the future colliding with very, very different aesthetics. So as a whole, this combined set is really neat and allows you to really play out these hypothetical G1 and Beast Wars type conflicts against the Decepticons and the Predacons. In a way, I'm kind of disappointed that there wasn't a bad guy like equivalent to this. Like, I'm glad we got the characters we did, but it is weird that we got all Maximals and Autobots and no Predacons or Decepticons, because I'd be very curious to see what they came up with for those. Like, I could see maybe Scorponok as Sandstorm, like the BotCon Sandstorm character. And I don't know, we could have had maybe like another Seeker repaint as a character we're still missing, or we could do something interesting like Ferric from Cyclonus, because he's part of Kingdom. He'd work really well. So yeah, that's in no way an indictment of these figures. They're great for what they are, but it would have been cool to see the flip side of this too, right? Instead of just all good guys in one combined box set. Okay, and this is going to complete our look at the Battle Across Time Grimlock and Mirage. Again, it's one of those things, I really want to like this set. I really, really do. There are things about this to be excited about, right? You get your Earth Mode Mirage, who, you know, for the most part, like definitely in the alt mode and mostly in the robot mode, is an improvement over the Siege one. But the lack of an ability to actually mount a shoulder cannon just, to me, is just, it's kind of a deal breaker. I mean, obviously I bought it knowing what I was getting into, but, you know, if I wasn't such a completionist or I wasn't somebody who wanted to review these toys, I probably wouldn't pick him up. Honestly, he just doesn't do enough right. And then Grimlock to me is just an absolute disappointment. I can't bring myself to like really anything about him, except maybe the head sculpt. The head sculpt, I think, is the one saving grace, because it is very cool. Could be a little lower set, but it's a very, very nice head sculpt, and does help set him apart from Dinobot. But like every other decision about this guy was just all wrong. Like every decision was a bad decision with this guy. So that, I hate that. I hate that it makes me hate the toy, but it really does. Because I really wanted him to be good. And if it had looked even remotely like that custom job I showed you guys, it would have been 1,000 times better. So, to me, very, very disappointing. So, whether or not I recommend this set, definitely not as highly as the other 2-pack, right? The Skywarp and Sideswipe one had way less issues. In fact, not really any issues to speak of. I mean, Skywarp, he's a little odd because he's a retool, not his own mold, but, what are you going to do with that? But, I was very pleased with that 2-pack. And this one, I just find myself being almost kind of angry at. And that's silly being angry at toys, but, bothered because, like, these could have been way better. And they just said, no, we're just going to release them like this and deal with it. It's basically the mindset here. So, yeah, I'm very disappointed because I know, we're probably not going to get a Beast Wars Grimlock again, at least not for a very long time, if ever. So they really squandered their chance to give us a fantastic update to a rather obscure but highly sought-after toy. So, yeah, to me it's kind of unforgivable. I can't really recommend this set at full price, and it's mostly because of the Grimlock. If this set ever does go on sale, which with Amazon it's very give and take, right? Like some of their sets go on clearance, some just sell out and you never see them again. So just, I don't know. I use your own discretion, but I don't know if the full like $50 price is worth it, because to me, it's just a very disappointing set. However, that is purely my opinion. So now I want to know what you all think. Do you think I'm right in my disdain for this set, or do you think I'm being overly critical? Do you think it's better than what I view it as? Any and all feedback's always welcome in the comments section. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to toss it a like. Let YouTube know you want to see more stuff like this. If you do want to see more like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you always get a heads up when I post something new. I thank you for joining me for this look at the brand new Transformers War for Seibertron Kingdom Battle Across Time in Grimlock and Mirage. And with all that said, I will see you next time.